This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Tonight on The South Today, former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Michael Cullen returns to Dunedin to help out Labour's candidate for Untitled. A new initiative from the University of Otago will see a group of students living in an ecologically friendly flat from next year. And a Timaru woman wants more funding for a life-altering procedure for those with hearing loss. Kia ora, good evening, I'm Melissa Barton. A terminal cancer diagnosis could not stop a Labour stalwart hitting the street corner for his party yesterday. Former Finance Minister and Dunedin South MP Sir Michael Cullen was in Mosgiel last night at a street corner meeting for Labour candidate Ingrid Leary.
We went hard, we went early.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Michael Cullen was back in his old patch yesterday, supporting Labour Tairi candidate Ingrid Leary in Mosgiel. Cullen, who was MP for St Kilda and Dunedin South in the 80s and 90s, says he's enjoyed visiting the South again.
But every time I come down to Dunedin, I think, I wish my wife liked colder weather, because we live up in the Eastern Bay of Plenty, and I'd actually much rather live here.
But he's not very pleased with the latest boundary changes to his old electorate.
Well, I think the boundary changes have created a, shall we say, a more interesting electorate. Personally, I was pretty annoyed that they took the peninsula out of the old Dunedin South seat, and I don't think that was really necessary. I think they could have found a better answer than that. But Ingrid has got the job of going from Belle Cluther up to sort of around the outside of the new Dunedin seat. So it's a very much bigger seat than the St Kilda one that I first represented, which stopped at the top of Caversham and then went down the peninsula. So it was pretty nice and easy.
Cullen was diagnosed earlier this year with stage 4 small cell lung cancer, which has also spread to his liver. He says he'll be voting yes in the euthanasia referendum.
This isn't compulsory euthanasia that we're talking about. This is voluntary, people choosing, and doctors won't be forced. And if there's any suspicion that people are being lent on, then the doctor has to stop the process. So there's a lot of safeguards in the legislation.
Selected public polling booths are already open for the general election. In Mosgiel, the South Today.
The University of Otago's departing Vice-Chancellor says restructuring has set the institution up for the future. Arlene Haynes' almost 10 years as Vice-Chancellor at the university was punctuated by the death of student Sophia Cristani at a Dunedin flat party last year. As a result of that tragedy, Cristani's parents and other stakeholders have created the Sophia Charter to help keep students safe, especially with alcohol. Hayne also stood by making tough decisions, such as cutting 160 full-time jobs at the university 3 years ago. But she says the job cuts have put the university on a sure financial footing that helped it absorb the shock of this year's COVID-19 pandemic. Haynes stays on until early next year when she starts as Vice-Chancellor at Curtin University in Western Australia. Almost 24 students at the University of Otago will be taking part in a study on how to live more sustainably. The students will be housed together in 3 large flats, along with a large garden and a worm farm outside to take care of.
This backyard lawn behind a Dunedin student flat is set to be turned into an environmentally friendly garden over summer, so that Jessie Barron and her flatmates can practice living in a more sustainable way next year.
Yeah, so there's going to be a garden and a worm farm and compost and everything like that to obviously be a more of a sustainable living area, like in Dunedin flats, which is quite interesting. I think it'd be really, really cool.
The flat and garden are owned by the University of Otago, with the University's Sustainability Office hoping the tenants will compost, recycle, be energy efficient, grow their own food and lead active and healthy lives. Barron and her flatmates will get a discount on the cost of accommodation by letting various researchers from departments such as physics, geography and the Otago Business School study how they cope with their environmentally friendly lifestyle.
So I think, yeah, they're doing some research and they're writing a research paper, I think, on basically it's a little bit of a live-in lab, a bit of a guinea pig kind of thing.
Barron's already a keen gardener and says she's looking forward to establishing this garden while still being a student.
Flats are quite small, a little bit scummy, depending on where you are. So it's kind of, yeah, it's hard to have a garden and do all these sustainable things, which I think is really important for the earth, but just it's kind of hard to make your mark as a student.
A total of 20 students will be involved in the initiative when it starts next year. In Dunedin, the South Today.
Demolition of another building to make way for Dunedin's new hospital will start next week, followed by noisy pile testing. Demolition will begin on the former warehouse stationery building in Cumberland Street next week. The demolition will continue alongside pile testing, eventually moving on to the former Wilson's car park building. The pile testing is so structural engineers can look at how best to prepare the sites for the new facility. The tests are set to finish at the end of November. A Timaru woman who lost a significant amount of her hearing in her mid-40s says her hearing has been vastly improved with cochlear implants. Unfortunately, the surgical procedure costs around $50,000 for each ear, which is out of reach for many people.
Former music teacher Anne Trezis enjoys playing the old standards for herself as well as rest homes around Timaru, thanks to her cochlear implants. When she was in her mid-40s, her hearing started deteriorating and she resorted to hearing aids, but they really only helped when she was in a quiet space. Then 4 years ago she underwent a surgical procedure to give her cochlear implants, which have dramatically improved her hearing and given her her life back.
Now I'm able to accompany a local choir, I'm able to play for church services and other musical events, and I do quite a bit of playing in the rest homes. I go and entertain residents each month, and so I play a selection of all sorts of music.
Trezis says cochlear implants can be potentially life-changing for a number of people with hearing issues.
It means you can work if you want to, if you're working age, you need to be able to work. So your hearing is absolutely vital. It's more important than people realise. You don't realise how important it is until it's actually faded away and you find you can't do a lot of the ordinary everyday things anymore.
The surgical procedure costs about $50,000 for each ear, and Trezis wants to see government funding for cochlear implants increased.
I would really like to see the government step up funding, because neither the National Party nor the Labour Party have increased funding, and the waiting lists are growing. There are more and more people who are needing cochlear implants, and with those implants those people will be able to work again and they will be able to do more voluntary activities in the community if they were retirement age. Because it's frustrating if you're just sitting around at home, reduced to doing cooking and gardening because you can't do anything else.
Trezis has left a bequest in her will so that another patient can benefit from the life-changing technology. In Timaru, the South Today.
Still to come on the South Today, pupils at Clinton Primary School give their departing principal a colourful farewell, and we hear from the Deputy Prime Minister and leader of New Zealand First, Winston Peters, on why his party deserves your vote. So catch this and more after the break.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
Hi, our Campbell Menswear. We're back in George Street on the corner of Hanover Street. come and check out our big store. It's a big space full of bargains. Now look at these shirts. There's shirts for everybody here. Look at these merino pullovers, stacks of moleskins, literally tons of trousers. Check out these big racks of sports jackets. Beautiful.
Every reason, every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell Menswear, it fits.
So come and check out Alex Campbell Menswear. We're back on George Street in the old ANZ building.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Every reason, every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell Menswear, it fits.
You've seen us in the street, now find us online. Check out shopon.org.nz. We have all sorts of treasures, from retro and vintage clothing to antiques, homewares and accessories. New items added every week. We're open 24/7.
Welcome back. The principal of Clinton Primary School is leaving to take up a new job in nearby Belle Cluther. Clinton pupils had the chance to put on an art show as a way to say goodbye to their principal of 11 years.
Children at Clinton Primary School had the chance to showcase their art and creative talents to their families at an arts extravaganza held at the Clinton Community Hall. And at the same time they got to say farewell to their long-time principal, Vicky Neve.
So we have 79 students who had a focus on arts for most of this term, and finally we're in level 1, which means we've been able to invite our parent community in to be able to share the dance, the drama and the visual arts we've been working on.
The multifaceted show allowed the children to move on from the COVID level 19 restrictions, and their principal says art is a very good way for the youngsters to get through the anxiety of it all.
I think it's really important as a way to express their personality, their ideas in a different way. A lot of our children were a little bit anxious after lockdown and needed a bit of settling in time, so art has been a really good vehicle for them just to gather their emotions really and just process what's been going on.
After 11 years at the helm of Clinton Primary School, she's moving just up the road to teach in Belle Cluther.
Yes, very sad. This week is my last week at Clinton Primary School, and next term I'm going to be the principal at Belle Cluther School, which I'm very looking forward to.
Term 3 starts for primary school pupils next Monday. In Clinton, the South today.
New Zealand's general election is to be held on Saturday, October the 17th. Over this week, the South Today has been bringing you a series of quick statements from the leaders of the 5 main contending parties. Tonight we finished the series with Winston Peters, the leader of the New Zealand First Party.
In the 2020 campaign, there'll be a lot of issues and a lot of politicians making all sorts of statements for the voters to consider. But the key thing to remember is, what's the record, what is the performance, what has that politician or that party done with respect to the past? And we've just been through 3 years of extraordinarily difficult times. We had the terrible massacre in Christchurch, and then we had the Whakaari Island disaster, and then we had the outside intruder called COVID-19 all this year. That's been a heavy program, but as a government, we've combined, worked together, got behind the Prime Minister, got on top of the COVID-19 with 5 million New Zealanders, whilst we kept the economy on track. And now, as we come to this election, the question is, Where will the economy go from here? That's when you'll need real experience, real understanding, real common sense, not wild experimentation, not borrow and hope, and not all sorts of untried ideas. So New Zealand First offers the voice of reason based on 3 years of stable government and our ability to have 3 more years of that with whatever happens with the voters' decision on election day. The voter is king in this election. Remember, it's about you. So make sure in this campaign you get to hear what these parties are really like, not what their PR says they're like. We've not forgotten Otago and Southland. That's why we put so much of our policy into the provinces, why we've got the Provincial Growth Fund, why we're talking about aviation and every other utility being upgraded in places like Dunedin, in places like Southland. And we've made sure the dollar helps the income streams of exporters that have kept those 2 great regions alive. So it's in understanding those regions and having policies like saving TY Point, doing what we have to do with the port in Dunedin, ensuring that we've got a revival of the train building capacity of the Dunedin population. That's the workshops down there being revived, the new hospital. There's a lot more to be done. But as the good book says, by their deeds you will know them, and we're doing a lot.
After the break on the South today, there will be one last dance at the Belle Cluther War Memorial Hall before it undergoes a major restoration. And we take a look at the weather heading into the weekend. So see you after the break.
Every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell menswear, it fits.
If you're at risk of developing melanoma skin cancer, you owe it to yourself to have a mole map. Mole map is coming to your area. Phone today to make an appointment. It could save your life.
Ah, TV, our favourite babysitter. But it can be tough keeping up with what our tamariki are watching. Luckily, the Broadcasting Standards Authority has made some smart changes to the classification labels. Ooh! Plus changes to the time of day certain rated shows will air, and awesome new parental lock features, meaning your babysitter's job is safe. Find out more at safeviewing.co.nz.
Hi, Alex Campbell Menswear. We're back in George Street on the corner of Hanover Street. Come and check out our big store. It's a big space full of bargains. Now look at these shirts. There's shirts for everybody here. Look at these merino pullovers, stacks of moleskins, literally tons of trousers. Check out these big racks of sports jackets. Beautiful.
Every reason, every season, we're proud to dress the region. Alex Campbell menswear, it fits.
So come and check out Alex Campbell Menswear. We're back on George Street in the old ANZ building.
A poorly maintained heat pump can lose up to 35% of its output. The Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner team are experts. Their specially developed chemical wash is totally biodegradable. Call Mr. Heat Pump Cleaner and get the job done by the professionals.
Step into Shop on Carrot and discover a shop full of treasures. We have a fantastic range of vintage and retro clothes, upmarket clothing labels, collectible items, beautiful jewellery, quality linen and the best range of vintage haberdashery.
Thanks for staying with us. An old-fashioned town dance is being planned for next month at Belle Cluther's War Memorial Hall. It will be the first time that such an event has been held there in many years and will come just before the building is demolished to make way for a new community hub.
Belle Cluther's War Memorial Hall is set to be demolished early next year to make way for a new replacement community hub. But before it gets bowled over, project leaders are planning one last dance in the 58-year-old building. Cluther Community Hub Charitable Trust Chairman Dale Anderson says it's been a while since a public ball was held at the facility.
The last ball held here was a number of years ago, outside of the likes of the South Otago formal and things like that. So we saw it as a great opportunity for the community to come and experience something of the past.
The first ball held here was a Saturday night dance in 1962, and Trust member Ken Payne remembers stories of how town dances were held back in the day.
Probably turning the clock back a little bit further than my own personal experience, but 60 years ago it was a well-known thing that we'd within the community, and in particular some of the community halls, that we'd have dances and they'd all bring a peter and a plate along. And so of course Richard has alluded to me, he didn't know what a peter was, so for the people that don't know what a peter is, it's a half-gallon jar full of beer, and all the men would perhaps locate themselves out in the car park and have a few beers, and when the music started up they'd come in and start dancing with the women and perhaps even meet their future partners. So yeah.
It's hoped the new community hub will be completed in 2 years' time. In Belle Cluther, the South Today.
And now recapping tonight's top stories on the South Today. Former Deputy Prime Minister Sir Michael Cullen returned to Dunedin to help out Labour's candidate in Tairi. A new initiative from the University of Otago will see a group of students living in an ecologically friendly flat from next year. And a Timaru woman advocates for more funding for a life-altering procedure for those with hearing loss. And now look at what's happening in tomorrow's ODT. Welcome, Hayden Meikle. What have you got for us in Saturday's paper?
Good evening, Mel. Well, it's been one of those days, really. It started a little bit quiet, and then lots of big breaking news. And very sad news today. Dave Cull, former Dunedin Mayor, standing down as chairman of the Southern District Health Board. Dave's revealed he's got some health issues. He's been diagnosed with a tumour on his pancreas, and he wants to step back from the DHB to understandably focus all of his energies on his health and his recovery and his family. So we'll have more on that, exploring
and wish him all
what
the
it means
best.
for Dave. Wish him all the best. He's served a lot, obviously a huge role with the District Health Board, and understandably he wants to focus on himself for a while. So absolutely wish him all the best. And then big news out of Invercargill. Tony Biddle, the Deputy Mayor down there, she's had a tough year or two. She's announced her resignation. We're seeking to find out more about that. Leaves a big hole. She's been doing a big job down there in Invercargill. Obviously that council's had a few issues, so that's going to be a huge talking point for our Southland readers on who's going to replace her and what the future of that role is. So
they've got a big act to follow, haven't
very
they?
big, yeah. And then sort of to lighten things up a bit, we've got a cracking yarn for the front page. It's one of those sort of special Dunedin yarns, in this case Mosgiel.
Yeah.
Eileen Pratt, she turns 100 tomorrow, which of course is very special in itself, but the angle of the story is she's had her hair cut at the same hairdressing business every Friday for, she thinks, 80 years, her entire adult life, every single Friday, to the point where now they have a reserved sign over the chair for her every Friday at 11 a.m. So that's just a lovely, good local identity yarn, which
that's
people
really sweet.
People will really like. Another sweet yarn is a 6-year-old boy who's gone skiing for 40 straight days, I think, this season, raising money for the Cancer Society, always for a really good cause. I think it's for his mother's had a cancer battle, so wee Lockie, the 6-year-old, wanted to do what he could to raise some money, so that's quite nice. The election, of course, is finally nearly here, so our Mike Houlihan will have his next election column in the paper tomorrow. And rugby, it's Bledisloe Cup time. I think we mentioned it last night. Well, finally we're here. The All Blacks team was named today for the Bledisloe Cup on Sunday. So we'll have all the latest angles out of the All Black camp as they get ready to face the Wallabies. All that and all sorts of other stuff in tomorrow's paper.
Wonderful, and you can catch all of that in tomorrow's ODT. And now it's time for a look at the weather.
Tonight's weather proudly brought to you by Mole Map.
Looking at the situation, another day or two of north to northeasterly airflow will keep weather mostly fine in the east this weekend, but bring some rain to western coast. Starting off at the northwest of the South Island, rain developing in the morning and becoming heavier in the evening with northeasterlies. Greymouth reaches 14 and Westport 15 degrees. To the northeast, cloudy with light rain at times, northeasterly breezes with a high of 17 degrees in Blenheim, and get your umbrellas out in Nelson as there's rain with northeasterlies and a cooler 14 degrees. In Canterbury, fine with high cloud and northeasterlies, 17 degrees in Kaikoura and Christchurch. Ashburton is fine with northeasterlies and a high of 18. Looking at the southern towns, all here can expect fine weather with fresh to moderate northeasterlies. Lumsden has the high of this area with 19 degrees. Belle, Cluther and Gore both reach 18, and the Catlins is looking at a high of 15. Travelling westwards to the Central Lakes region, Wanaka and Alexandra can expect fine weather with moderate northerlies. A bit of cloud and a high of 18. Queenstown is the same but with a slightly lower 16 degrees. Te Anau can also expect moderate northeasterlies, but umbrellas are required as there will be rain and a high of 15. Looking at the northern towns along the coast, Timaru and Oamaru can expect fine weather with moderate northeasterlies. Timaru reaches a high of 18, Oamaru 15. Further inland, Twizel and Marama will also have fine weather with moderate northerlies, sprinkled with a bit of cloud and a high of 19. In Dunedin tonight, expect clear skies with northeasterly breezes. Looking at an overnight low of 8. And it's fine and sunny at first tomorrow, but high cloud increases later on in the day and will lower by evening, followed by some fresh breezy northeasterlies. Looking at a high of 14 and a low of 10. And it's cloudy on Sunday with a few breezy northerlies, looking at a high of 19 and a low of 10. Moving further south to Invercargill, there will be clear skies tonight with cloud increasing and an overnight low of 7. High cloud thickening and lowering tomorrow with mild northerlies tending to become fresh and gusty later on, a high of 19 and a low of 9. Cloudy on Sunday with some spits of light rains at times with fresh northerlies, a high of 17 and a low of 11. And that's all for our news for this Friday and indeed for the week. For the latest news from the southern region, head online to odt.co.nz or follow Channel 39 on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks for joining us. Ka kite anō.
This bulletin proudly brought to you in association with Alex Campbell's Menswear.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.